A baby gorilla was looking strangely at his mother. No one understood what was happening until one of the caretakers called the veterinarian. The silence of that mother gorilla unsettled the keepers. The baby was no longer seen clinging to her fur. He kept his distance, just watching her. But then the head of the caretakers understood that look, and when everyone discovered the truth, they were left speechless. Are you watching this story from somewhere in the world? Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Turn on the bell so you don't miss more stories that touch the soul, and give a like if you already feel that lump in your throat. Come on, your support helps these silenced voices reach farther. In the depths of a hidden sanctuary nestled in the misty hills of Uganda, where sunlight filters through an ancient canopy of acacias like threads of liquid gold, the air always carries the echo of something ancient. It's not just the murmur of distant rivers or the squawks of macaws flying through the dawn sky. It's the pulse of wild life, contained but untamable, within enclosures that pretend to be homes. The Nkwima Sanctuary, tucked into the lower slopes of Mount Elgon, had become a refuge for dozens of mountain gorillas rescued from poachers and illegal mines. Their enclosures weren't cold concrete prisons, but extensions of the forest. Red clay soil speckled with bamboo, moss-covered rocks where they climbed and leapt, and an artificial stream whispering promises of freedom. Here, humans didn't command. They watched, protected, and sometimes learned to cry in silence. Lyra was the undisputed queen of that green world, a mountain gorilla with coarse black fur and silver streaks on her back that revealed her 15 years of battles won against extinction. She had been rescued from a trafficker's nets on the borders of the Democratic Republic of Congo, scars on her arms telling stories of fierce territorial fights. At Nkwima, Lyra had flourished. Her broad chest swelled with rumbles that calmed dominant males, and her eyes, deep brown like wet earth, seemed to guard ancestral secrets. But nothing had prepared her for motherhood. When she gave birth to Quito under a full moon that painted the enclosure silver, the entire sanctuary seemed to hold its breath. The birth was swift, almost poetic, a low groan, an instinctive push, and there he was, a tiny bundle of wet fur and half-open eyes, clinging to her chest as if the whole world depended on that bond. From that instant, Lyra never let him go. She carried him hanging from her belly while foraging for sweet roots, cradled him against her neck during naps under the fig tree's shade, and at night, when the sanctuary sank into silence broken only by the hoot of owls, she purred a deep melody that seemed drawn from the earth's core. "My light," the caretakers murmured, translating the name they gave the baby, Quito, which in the local language means little star. The other gorillas of the group, the alpha male, a giant named Baraka, and the playful females Zara and Nala, looked at her with a mix of envy and respect. Lyra replied with a simple possessive rumble, "Mine." No one dared get too close. Elias Coffey, the head caretaker, was a 50-year-old man whose sun-baked Ugandan skin told more stories than any diary. Tall and lean, with a graying beard that gave him the air of an African sage, he had devoted 3 decades to Nkwima. He'd arrived as a young botanist from Kampala, drawn by the calls of gorillas in old documentaries, and stayed because, as he used to say, those eyes look at you and ask why the world betrayed them. Elias knew Lyra better than his own wife, who waited for him patiently in a nearby village. He noticed the smallest changes, how she tilted her head before a storm, or how her long black fingers parted leaves with a delicacy that belied her strength. That morning, the sun rose lazily over the hills, bathing the air in a soft orange that slipped through the wire mesh of Enclosure 4. Elias leaned on the observation fence, a mug of herbal tea in hand, scanning the landscape with worn binoculars. The group was active. Baraka beat his chest in a morning ritual. Zara climbed a vine with feline grace. Nala splashed in the stream, scattering droplets that shone like diamonds. But in the center of it all, seated on a flat rock eroded by years of rain, Lyra remained motionless. Her posture was the same as always, upright, protective, with Quito pressed to her chest. Yet something didn't fit. The baby, who usually squirmed and clung to his mother's fur with tenacious little fingers, now lay still. Too still. "Do you see that, Miriam?" murmured Elias, handing the binoculars to his assistant. Miriam, a 30-year-old woman with tight braids and a mud-stained work uniform, frowned as she focused. She was the team's newcomer, freshly arrived from Nairobi with a degree in ethology and a fire in her eyes that reminded Elias of his younger days. "He looks tired. Maybe the heat. Last night was suffocating." Elias shook his head, though his stomach tightened with a familiar knot. He had seen this before, in other enclosures in other seasons. It's not tiredness. Look at his eyes. Through the lenses, Quito wasn't asleep. His eyelids were wide open, fixed on Lyra's face with an intensity that wasn't childish curiosity but something deeper, more disturbing, an absolute stillness as if the world had stopped for him. Lyra repositioned him gently, waiting for the instinctive grasp that always came. Nothing. Only that fixed, unblinking gaze. Whispers among the staff had begun a week earlier, like a low wind before a storm. "The little one doesn't eat well," they said in the caretaker's cabin during breakfast. "Lyra licks him too much. Maybe she's smothering him." But Elias knew it wasn't that. He'd checked the records. Quito was nursing, though in irregular sips, his weight was stable, at least on paper. Now, seeing him up close, he noticed details the numbers couldn't capture. The baby's chest rose and fell in erratic spasms like a failing motor. His lips trembled but made no sound. And Lyra. Oh, Lyra! Her shoulders, usually relaxed like gentle hills, were tense, every muscle defined under her fur like strings ready to snap. "We should call Dr. Soto," suggested Miriam, her voice an anxious whisper. Dr. Elena. Soto was the head veterinarian, a Spanish expatriate who had landed in Uganda with a case full of cutting-edge equipment and an accent that made meetings sound like gatherings in a cafe. An expert in primates, she had saved more gorillas from opportunistic infections than anyone else on the continent. Elias hesitated, watching Lyra lift Quito until their noses almost touched. Mother and son gazed at each other for an endless instant. No blinking, no movement. What were those eyes saying? "Help me. Don't leave me." 15 minutes stretched like rubber. Elias felt the first sting of true dread. "This isn't normal," he said finally, lowering the binoculars. "Bring yesterday's feeding logs and alert the others. Passive observation until we know more." Miriam ran toward the office, her boots crunching over the gravel. Elias moved closer to the fence, close enough for Lyra to smell him. His scent of earth and sweat was a balm for her. Normally, she would grunt a playful greeting or show him her palm, a hard-earned gesture of trust. Today, she only turned her body, shielding Quito with her massive frame. Her lips quivered, and she pressed her forehead to his in a slow, deliberate motion. Elias recognized it instantly. The touch of mourning, a ritual he'd seen only once when a female named Suri lost her baby in a flash flood. It was pure anguish, a bridge between instinct and soul. "Lyra," he whispered through the mesh, his voice a human purr. "Let me see him, my friend." The gorilla's eyes lifted to his, wet beneath the morning light, reflecting fragments of the sun like shattered mirrors. The sound she made wasn't a warning roar, but a deep vibrating hum that resonated in the humid air. It was pain and plea intertwined, a lament that made the heart shrink. Miriam returned, panting, folder in hand. "Record's normal, Chief. But look, a note in the margin. Baby inactive after feeding." Elias felt Miriam's hand on his shoulder, an anchor in the rising tide. "She's afraid," she murmured. "She's grieving too soon." He pulled the walkie-talkie from his belt, its plastic scratched from years of use. "Dr. Soto, are you in the clinic?" A crackle, then her clear voice. "Here, Elias. What's going on?" "Enclosure 4, urgent. Possible neonatal distress, dehydration, or something worse." A pause, papers rustling. "Worse? How?" He looked again at the pair. Quito lifted a trembling little arm, brushing Lyra's face in a slow reflex motion. Syrup, slow. Neurological, maybe. Come quickly. He lowered the device, hypnotized by Lyra cradling the baby, purring that deep song that used to lull him to sleep. But Quito's head only hung limp, his eyes fixed on her in mute supplication. Miriam swallowed. She's trying to wake him. Yes, Elias replied, voice hoarse. And she doesn't know how. Heat burned behind his eyes, but he held it back. In Enquima, tears were for later, when the sun set and cheap whiskey flowed in the cabin. Open the side curtain. Soft light, nothing harsh. When the light shifted, filtering in softly, Lyra blinked in confusion. For a second, her posture straightened. A flicker of hope. She thought salvation had arrived. Come on, little one, Elias murmured against the glass, palm flat like a promise. Hold on, she answered with another hum. Rocking faster now, a frantic rhythm that clashed with her earlier stillness. Quito's fingers twitched once, a fleeting spasm. Then nothing. The entire enclosure seemed to hold its breath. The neighboring gorillas began pounding their chests, a drumming of alarm that vibrated through the bones. Elias cursed softly, a raw word Miriam pretended not to hear. 25 years here and it still destroys me. She nodded, eyes shining. She's begging us. Lyra turned again, blocking them, flashing her yellowed fangs. A warning, not a threat. But her hands never released Quito. She pressed his little face to hers, nose to nose, inhaling as if she could breathe life into him. Elias felt his throat tighten. It's instinct. She knows he's fading. The walkie crackled again. 2 minutes out, said Soto, voice tense. Details. Minimal movement, no vocalization, conscious but fading. Elias's knuckles whitened on the fence. Make it 1. He's barely moving. Lyra shifted, tightening her embrace, alternating whistles and hums. Half lullaby, half strangled cry. She hasn't eaten all day, Miriam whispered. Just sits there. She's waiting for us to fix it, said Elias. Soto, bring the neonatal respirator and a low-dose dart. Can we separate them? Copy. He stared at the ground, voice cracking. Don't hate me, Lyra. We're only trying. Quito's little hand slipped from her fur. Lyra froze, then released a sound that chilled the blood. A deep, trembling moan rolling through the valley like distant thunder. Miriam covered her mouth. God, Elias stood firm. Calm, no noise. He shouted to an assistant, Call Soto now. Something's wrong. Miriam ran along the walkway, voice trembling as she repeated the call. Through the glass, Lyra sat motionless, not roaring, not throwing branches, doing something worse. She fell silent. Her silence spread like fog. Thick, suffocating. Elias' heart pounded like a war drum. Hold on, Lyra. Help's coming. The gate beeped. Soto burst in, black case in hand, panting, ponytail undone. Since when? 3 days of weak feeds. Critical this morning, Elias said, eyes still fixed ahead. She crouched by the window. Convulsions. Secretions. Minimal movement, no cry. Conscious but shutting down inside? Elias nodded. We can't treat from here. We have to sedate her. Lyra sensed the shift, tensed, wrapping Quito in an armored embrace, rocking slowly. Quito's head drooped against her shoulder, half-closed eyes unfocused. Elias's throat closed. She knows, Soto gestured to a handler. Low dart. Not full dose. Miriam reappeared, pale. Infant mask O2 in the kit. But if it's what I fear, too late. Elias glared. Don't say it yet. They waited for Lyra to retreat to the back. Calm breathing. Soto raised the tranquilizer pistol, a soft hiss, impact. Lyra flinched, growled, looked around in confusion. Lyra, easy, Elias murmured through the speaker. We're here to help. The sedative acted in 60 seconds. Heavy eyelids, sluggish movements. Still, she didn't release Quito. Elias and Soto entered quietly, voices low to avoid alerting nearby groups. Low profile, she whispered. They knelt beside the massive body. Up close, Elias saw the wear. Lyra had lost weight, her fur dull, her arms trembling under sedation. He touched her hand. "Good girl. We've got this." They lifted Quito. His tiny body burned with fever. Weak pulse, shallow breaths. Soto palpated quickly. Elias tensed. "Save him," she checked. Stethoscope, flashlight, 30 seconds of listening. Irregular heartbeat. Severe anemia. Pale gums, slow refill. Infection or congenital. Heart or lungs. Tests. She began manual CPR as Miriam secured the O2 mask. Puffs of air inflated Quito's chest. Silence. Then, a faint whistle. "Come on, little star," Elias whispered, hand on his tiny arm. "Fight." Lyra stirred semi-conscious, groaning low, her hand clawing at the air. Soto shook her head. "Stabilized, but he needs ICU. To the clinic." They wrapped Quito in a soft blanket, tubes secured. "I'll go with him," Elias said. "No," Soto cut him off. "Stay, she'll wake looking for him." "You're her anchor," he relented. "Take care of him, doctor." Soto and Miriam hurried out, the gate closing with a metallic echo. He crouched beside Lyra, voice soft. "They're helping him." "You didn't fail." She blinked glassily, her fingers clutching his boot, a mute plea not to leave. Hours crawled like stretched shadows. Rain began to drum gently on the tin roof. Elias sat against the wall, watching her slow breaths. From time to time, Lyra opened her eyes toward the door, a question in her clouded gaze. The walkie finally crackled. Soto's restrained voice. "Elias, we lost him." He closed his eyes. Cardiac defect. Underdeveloped left ventricle. "Nothing we could do." He looked at Lyra, now awake, feeling the fracture in the air. "She's safe?" "Yes, I'm sorry." He switched it off. Silence. Then to the gorilla. "He's gone, Lyra." She looked at him, then slowly turned to the empty spot. Touched the ground. Smelled it. Sank heavily down. A sound came out. Long, hollow, mournful. The group fell silent. Birds stopped singing. Elias pressed his forehead to the glass, tears hot. "You did everything right. You held him till the end." That night she didn't move. Water and fruit untouched, her hand resting on the blanket that still smelled of Quito. At dusk, Elias watched alone from observation. In the dim light, Lyra lifted the blanket, folded it to her chest, purring the lullaby against the cold glass. "Goodbye, right?" he whispered. She looked once. Their eyes met. She closed hers, laying down, still stoic. Weeks later, she carried the blanket everywhere. Her strength returned. She rejoined the group, ate, even licked Sarah's baby. But Elias never forgot that first look. Not defiance, not confusion. A mother silently pleading for help. When he finally understood, it was too late. But Lyra's story didn't end in mourning. And Kima still held more secrets, more intertwined lives. Remember, maternal love transcends species, an invisible thread binding jungles and souls. If this story moved you, share what it means to you. Have you ever seen mourning in nature? Comment, subscribe, and like, because every voice counts.